a lot of the correspondence I've read is asking why aren't we allowing compostable tied into our organics? So you're asking us not to make the motion here and wait. I'm okay with that. I just want everybody to think about, one, I'll probably be bringing forward amendment if nobody else does. And secondly, should we be moving the date from what we said it was going to be?
Okay, 2 good points of discussion. I'll pass it on to other councillors to see how they're feeling about it. Councillor Lavery.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Harrison. So I think we're all working hard to understand the difference between biodegradable and compostable, and actually compostable without high heat, because, you know, those are, and I have to say, I am far from being expert or up to speed on that, but that's where I am right now. I also think, I was going to bring up some of the same points that Councillor Eliason was bringing up, and perhaps it's from talking to some of the same people. But I think retailers in the community, at least some key ones, are working really hard to make this an opportunity, as opposed to viewing it as a negativity. And the issue, at least for me, of using corn syrup compostable bags, which I think are non-high heat compostable, there's at least in the conversation I had this morning, was that that could be delivered, it could be truly, and again, I don't know how true this is, it could be truly compostable and might come in at less of a price in a paper bag. So I find this interesting. And so for me, is how do we either get this into the conversation, if there's time, or within our bylaw have an option for, and again, I don't want to wordsmith it right now, but to permit us to do something truly compostable if that technology is indeed there and we agree to, and to put that in as a third potential option in the bylaw. So I just put that on the table here right now. I'm not sure how we proceed with that. And I think we will need probably more expert advice than myself or perhaps our colleagues making a motion that may or may not be based on what the reality is. But it's an intriguing idea. And I guess that's what I want to permit us to do, is to have that option. I'm all in on this. But if there is an option, I want us to be able to include it from the offset. I mean, we can always adjust the bylaw later on. But so I'm thinking in the next 2 or 3 weeks, we hopefully will get some more information, basically.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Lavery. And you know, I think it's good that councillors are researching. And I think it would be, if council was leaning that way, it would be a very simple amendment to the bylaw if they wish to include it. But I do encourage all of council to be totally educated about that option prior to the public hearing. Councillor Lindgren.
Thanks.
Oh, press again, sorry. Okay, one more time.
Got it. So everybody had the same thought when Councillor Eliason said biodegradable, so that's why I originally pushed my button. But so I'm also interested in compostable versus biodegradable, but I'm also interested in a lot of the feedback that we've gotten up to this point has been about whether or not we have to mandate that retailers charge for the bag, and whether or not they can absorb that cost themselves. And I'm wondering if that's something that we have control over, and whether or not an amendment to regarding that might be appropriate at some point down the road.
Thank you. Again, that's another possible amendment at the public hearing. Okay. Certainly possible. Councillor Cannon.
I guess my thought is biodegradable or compostable, whether we should be looking at making that amendment so that going into that public input, that it's out there and then we're getting input on it before we close the public input, and then potentially amend it after. And because we can always take it out, I guess. I just think that if it's in there before, then it's discussed at the public hearing because it's out there.
Okay, I understand. I'll just ask the Chief Administrative Officer if making an amendment, if a councillor wanted to make an amendment now, prior to going to first and second reading, we could do so at this table today.
Yes, you could.
Okay.
I'm not clear on what exactly the amendment.
No, we're just sort of talking about it.
It's confusing all of us.
So I think there is some discussion about including compostable bags as being allowable. I believe that's what I'm hearing here, but I haven't seen the motion yet. Councillor Flynn.
Thank you, Worship, and I do want to commend you for your style of leadership, because a group of retailers in the community asked if they could present their thoughts on this issue, and you said, as the DSA rep and the economic development rep, to go ahead and meet with these group of retailers that are in support of the bylaw but have concerns. And in fact, this morning I received an email that I should have forwarded when I got it to all of council that has significant information about compostable bags, about what's going on in the industry, and about whether retailers should be forced to charge for bags or can choose to build it into their business plan and cover them that cost if they want. And to me, I'm struggling with whether we should do a change today. I think I'm okay with leaving it and having the public hearing, and then we can determine if there's enough support for some amendments. I just think we might spend a lot of time talking about something that if we had the amendment, we might not need to talk about, but that's not a bad thing. Helps educate us. So my only concern, honestly, in voting for this is whether anybody feels changing it to 2 weeks earlier is an issue. And I don't think it is, because that was a potential timeline, and anytime government can do something ahead of schedule, that's a good thing. So I will vote in support, and I think I am comfortable waiting till we have the public hearing. But I think we've made it quite clear at this table that we want to hear and learn about compostable versus paper and charging. So we're open to input. So I will vote in favor.
Thank you. Any other comments on the motion, which is to go to first, second reading? Okay, I see no more comments. All those in favor? Passes unanimously. Thank you. Item 10, reconsideration of bylaws. So the first one is City of Salmon Arm Industrial Revitalization Tax Exemption. The motion's on the screen. I need a mover and seconder, Councillor Cannon and Councillor Eliason. Thank you. Let the administrator read the motion.
Moved by Councillor Cannon, second by Councillor Eliason, that the bylaw entitled Industrial Revitalization Tax Exemption Amendment Bylaw number 4337 be read a final time.
Thank you. Corporate Officer.
Thank you, Your Worship. This amendment bylaw seeks to extend the Industrial Revitalization Tax Exemption Program to May 12th, 2024. All other terms and conditions of the program will remain the same.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from council? Okay, I think I might have mentioned to council before that as we suspected, after our surge in residential construction, there's been a lot of interest in this revitalization tax exemption in the industrial park. And I have signed 3 applications in the last 6 weeks. I expect there'll be another application that will come now. And there is no doubt that when considering expansion in the industrial park, the industrial revitalization tax exemption is a consideration. So that's what we want. It's working. So I'd encourage you to vote in favor of final reading. Any other comments? All those in favor? Thank you. 10.2. City of Salmon Arm Official Community Plan Amendment Bylaw, Cutting Edge Holdings. Need a mover and seconder for this. Thank you, Councillor Flynn. Councillor Wallace-Richmond, Director of Development Services.
Thank you, Worship. The proposed bylaw proposes to rezone the property at 1231 30th Street Northeast from highway commercial to high density residential.
Great, thank you. And I know it's we're very familiar with this as we've been through the public hearing. Is there any comments from council before final reading? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? Thank you. 10.3, City of Salmon Arm Zoning Amendment Bylaw, which is associated with the OCP change. I need a mover and a seconder. Councillor Wallace Richmond, Councillor Eliason, Director of Development Services.
And this bylaw is related to the previous one. It proposes to rezone the subject property from R1, single-family residential, to R5, high-density residential, for potentially 13 units.
Thank you. Any comments? All those in favor? Passes unanimously. We're on to informational correspondence. Please press your button if there's items you would like to speak to. Start with Councillor Eliason.
Yeah, thanks. I was wondering if we can do a block motion for 12, 13, and 14, or if those have to be separate. One is the stop-up enclosure of Blackburn Park for the Children's Fest. The other is for camping, and the other one is for the noise bylaw.
I'll ask the Chief Administrative Officer, do we need separate motions for those?
They could all be done in one, your worship.
I would move, because they're all very similar, that we direct staff to work with them for those things.
Seconded by Councillor Flynn. Councillor Eliason, did you wish to speak to your motion?
These are long-standing events where we've given permission in prior years. There haven't been any complaints, and they're very valuable parts of our community. So I thought I'd get all three done in one swoop before I talked about building stats.
Thank you. Does anybody wish to speak to this motion? Okay. Councillor Wallace Richmond, you don't wish to speak to the motion? Okay. I will call the question then. All in favor? Passes. Thank you. Councillor Eliason, did you have any other items?
Number one, please.
Okay.
And further to your previous comments about building stats, last year at this time we'd seen 34 houses built or under permit. This year we're at 9 single-family dwellings. So that's a lot of houses that have been built in the past years, and I've talked about it being sort of a record year for single-family dwellings. But we've had 5 this month compared to 12 year past, right? So we're less than a third of what we were in previous years at this point. The comments that, Your Worship, what you've just said, we're seeing it we're seeing that shift. And we've seen that shift a few times since we've been here. And that shift is to institutional and commercial and industrial. So while our numbers are way up, it's fewer buildings, but it's for a different purpose. So being the fastest growing community in BC as we have been for the past few years, this is what we expect. What I'd like to point out is on page 2. And if the markets have a cyclical nature, what you're going to see is that in similar years when we've had the big years, which if you look at 2000, 2007 and 2008, in those big years, but if you scroll across to 2009, you can see that it dropped nearly in half. And you can tell that in 2008 there was a lot of commercial activity because of the way that February and March came in. There's an $8 million jump, and then there's a $15 million jump. And that's not what you see with regular residential construction. Those are big projects. And so what I'm cautious of is that we're able to escape the same sort of depths we got, the lows that we got to in 2009 and 2010, carrying through until 2013. So right now it's good news. Right now it's excellent. More large buildings for more jobs in our community, but I'd like to see us find a way to level that out. Not that we control the market, but just a word of caution.
Great, thank you, and agree with your comments. Is there any other items you wish to speak to?
No, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Wallace Richmond.
Your Worship, item 4, the petition regarding Molly's Law. I want to inform council that I heard from Mr. Zakis, Jeff Zakis, who is here today to be part of this process. Obviously important to him given his recent loss. And if it was okay with council, could he please address us briefly about his decision to pursue this matter?
Yes, please come forward. Is there anyone on council who would not agree with that? Okay. If we can give you 3 or 4 minutes, that would be super. Thank you for being here. Thank you for speaking to us.
It's very hard to talk about this. Now, where I live on a piece of property. It's 13 acres. I share a forest with multiple neighbors. Along the edge of my property, there is a trail which every day people walk their dogs. People that walk that trail knew Molly, because Molly would walk over to the trail and say hi to them and always came home. The day she disappeared was unlike her. If I had known that the snare trap was out there, I probably would have been able to find her, and I probably would have been able to save her. But there was no warning. I don't want this to happen to anybody else that owns a dog, because it could happen to anybody's dog walking through that trail. So I urge you, please, change the bylaw to get rid of those. They are nasty. I found Molly. Molly was still alive. She had the most beautiful blue eyes. Her eyes were black as coal. Her tongue was cut up from her trying to get out of this thing. Now, I was told there's a 24-hour that they're supposed to check that. Molly was gone for just over 24 hours. So the trapper that put this there was not checking it. It kills me every day that I did not go further into the bush. When we found her, it was really hard to even see her as she would blend in with the forest. When my roommate found her and he called me, I was expecting to find her dead. As I say, I just don't want it to happen to anybody. I don't believe there's a need for them to be allowed within the city of Salmon Arm. I appreciate all you letting me have this time. Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming forward. I know that's really difficult, and we empathize with you. Councillor Wallace-Richmond?
Thanks, Your Worship. It's very brave. Thank you for presenting through you, Your Worship. Can I get some advice from staff on whether or not this is how something like this would work?
There's a couple of things we could do, Councillor Wallace-Richmond. We could do that now, or we could give some direction to staff to look into it and get back to us, which would allow them time to look for resources.
Yeah, my intention, Your Worship, is that we do everything we can to explore ways to make sure this doesn't happen again. And if I could have the support of council to direct staff to report back to us on the matter, I would be very grateful.
Okay, I'll accept that as a motion. Is there a seconder to the motion? Councillor Lavery. Councillor Wallace-Richmond, do you wish to speak to the motion further?
No, thanks.
Does anybody else wish to speak to the motion? Okay, all's in favor of the motion. Okay, thank you. We will look into it, which is the best we can do right now, and we will get back to you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wallace-Richmond. Do you have further items?
No, Your Worship.
Councillor Flynn.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would like to quickly go back to item 1, because I did push my button to speak to it. But
yes, please do.
What's interesting to see from last year to this year, and it surprises me, is the third line item. So as much as we don't have nearly as much new single-family dwellings, look at the value of suites. And it's nice to see more homes being built with suites. And that's a significant increase over last year. I'm surprised. I would have thought some of them from last year had suites too, but that's a significant increase. And I do want to echo what others have said, that the commercial and commercial and industrial lag behind. And related to Councillor Eliason's comments, hopefully we don't have a worldwide recession like we did in 2009, but who knows what's going on with a tariff war. It could create that. So I hope we miss that drop after 3 big years, but maybe we won't, but I really hope we do. But it's neat to see how many new dwellings with suites. are in there.
Thank you for pointing that out, Councillor Flynn. I'd kind of missed that myself, so it's an interesting piece. Do you have anything further, Councillor Flynn?
Not at this point.
Councillor Wallace-Richmond?
On the same stat, just out of curiosity, when does it get counted? When the building permit is issued, or when the work is, or final inspection, or?
Director of Development Services?
When it's issued.
I see, okay. Well, I can tell you for free that my edition was issued in 2017, but isn't actually getting done until this weekend. So sometimes there's a delay in when the actual dollars are spent, depending on, and the life of the building permit. Is that right?
That's right. The permit expires after a
2
certain.
years. I'm still in the window, but hence the rush. But I just wanted to know when it was actually counted, and it's at the point of issuing the permit.
Yeah, sorry, I don't have the
Councillor
exact
Eliason.
answer right now.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Eliason?
Number 17.
Yes, please.
This is a letter from Economic Development asking if we could be the fund flow through, and I would make a motion to do that.
Thank you. Seconder to the motion. Councillor Flynn?
We generally do this for a lot of nonprofits where they have to receive a grant, and we need to be able to receive it and flow the funds through to it. It's an exciting project. We met with the minister 2 weeks ago, and this is a result of a lot of other work. So it's good to see, and I hope council votes for it.
Thank you. I just asked the Chief Financial Officer if she wants to make any comments. I know that we handle a number of grants for nonprofits.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have spoken with Lana as well as the ministry, and I don't foresee an issue with this particular application.
Okay, thank you. Other comments? Councillor Flynn, did you wish to speak to this? I'll move to Councillor Flynn.
Thank you, Councillor Eliason, for bringing this forward. I saw this on the agenda or in the correspondence, and I thought maybe we would wait till Lana presented today because she was going to speak to it. But great news, and there's really no reason not to have it flow through the city and then managed by EDS, just like has been done with the MRDT funds. Okay, so very similar concept, and Councillor Eliason and others in the community have worked hard to bring this forward and get these funds. So I think it's a great initiative and very much support the motion to have the city manage the funds.
Thank you. Councillor Lavery, did you wish to speak to that motion? Okay. Any others wish to speak to the motion? Okay, I would just like to echo Councillor Flynn's comments there. I was a part of a meeting with Minister Popham, and it was clear to me that the relationship that Councillor Eliason and Economic Development has with that ministry certainly feels like we're working together, and that's a good feeling. So I will support the motion as well. All those in favor? Thank you. Councillor Flynn, you're still up.
Item 5.
Yes.
And before I lost my dog, we would walk McGuire Lake quite a bit, and I do agree that in the evenings, it is very dark in spots, and I'm just going to ask staff to take this letter into account for next budget year and determine if there's anything that could be done for better lighting year-round up to a certain time around McGuire Lake, because I do think it is one of the easiest parks to keep safe for walking in the winter, but lights could make a difference, and I'm sure there's a significant budget cost, but I would just like to have this referred to the budget process.
Yeah, I think that's very appropriate. We'll just pass that on. Thank you. Any others, Councillor Flynn?
Not at this point, thanks.
Councillor Lavery?
Yes, thanks, Mayor Harrison. I've got 3 here. The first one, number 3, which is Serena Kainer, President Shuswap Food Action, and a clarification question, really. I know that there was some discussion, email conversation about supporting an application to Interior Health, but I was just wondering what the state of the conversation is right now, because I'm really taking it, has it shifted to just how can we be involved putting food security language into the OCP, and we've moved away from supporting an Interior Health application?
I'll ask the Director of Development Services because I know he's been working on this.
Your Worship, based on the communication I've had, I am a little bit unclear where we are right now. Serena referred to the other item that was just talked about, the EDS letter to council regarding the food hub.
Yeah.
So you can see from my correspondence here, I was seeking some clarification on what exactly they wanted from the city. And I haven't received clarification about whether city funds are being asked for and whether they're even going to apply.
Thank you for that. That was my understanding as well. And I think at this, I really like what Shuswap Food Action is doing and growing and developing their capacity. I think at this stage, given the timeline and stuff and the lack of clarity, that it's a little premature for us to be doing anything. So I'm not going to make any motion along those lines. Number 24. And I'm not sure why we got this letter, but I thought I'd comment on it anyhow.
Please.
It just, so it's a notification of doing essentially vegetation management along the CN line. But it reminded me, and it came out of the EAC a couple of years ago, asking BC Hydro for an annual count of what they sprayed, and B, how much they sprayed, and B, what they sprayed. And not that there's any regulatory control over that, but it was a matter of information. And so I'm just, again, this is a comment at this stage. I just want to get my head around this a little bit further, but perhaps there's a role here to be asking CP as well as forestry companies who are spraying in our area, just what are you doing and how much? And so I'm just going to I'm putting that out there not as a motion, but just my thinking right now. And there's no action requested. The last one is number 22, a letter from the Minister on affordable housing. I know that we have gone over this numerous times and we'll continue to do that today. I'm hoping the students, are you going to be available here in the evening for the evening session? I think that there's some very interesting discussion that'll happen. If we could go about 4 pages down to the housing continuum that's part of that. Yeah, a little bit further up here. And I've just committed to never missing an opportunity to talk about the housing continuum and what is in place and where we are going and where we're hoping to go. Starting on the full left, addressing homelessness, there are conversations but no agreement between BC Housing and Salvation Army for extending the shelter to 365 24/7. Again, that we're not part of that discussion, but BC Housing and the Salvation Army are having those discussions. Housing with supportive services, the next box to the right, is part of the implication of the text amendment tonight, and perhaps some potential support for those who are homeless coming down the line. I'm very supportive of that. Social housing, it's been announced, but there's just under 70 rental affordable units geared to income coming forward, and they've started digging. This is all in the last year. Rental assistance to the private market, I'll just skip over that. It's just that there's some education involved. And on the far right, affordable housing for rental, to build rental accommodation as well as entry home level ownership. And there's some very creative things that are happening. So things are happening on the housing spectrum. We've come a long way in a year, and we've got another year or two to really try to cement some more of these aspects within here. But things are happening. And that's just, again, I've always promised each and every time I want to go over that continuum. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I just say, Councillor Lavery, I think the proactive approach that staff here and the Housing Task Force has done has made for a positive relationship, and being out ahead of the curve has certainly helped, because I know in some other communities it has not been as smooth. So appreciate the work of the Housing Task Force and of staff here. Do you have any other items, Councillor Lavery? No, thank you. Councillor Wallace-Richmond.
Thanks, Your Worship. I did want to raise item 18.
Yes.
I'm grateful for a third opportunity. In the last number of weeks, the District Arts Council, Downtown Salmon Arm, have met with staff members and council on a number of projects that we're cooperating on. And the feeling was that if the District Arts Council had a city rep. It might improve the flow of information. So Tracy has written this letter in response to that concern, and also letting us know that they also have big plans. So it's rude to nominate oneself for one, but I would certainly be willing to sit at that table if it was council's wish.
You read my mind. Councillor Flynn would like to make the motion that Councillor Wallace Richmond represent the City Council on the board. Is there a seconder? Councillor Cannon. Councillor Wallace Richmond, would you like to speak to it further?
No, thank you.
Okay. Councillor Eliason, would you like to speak to that motion?
Yeah, please.
Okay.
I was going to nominate the mayor to do that, because it's just to explore that, to explore what they're looking for, to explore those meetings and what they're asking for. And I was going to see if the mayor wanted to do it. No offense, because I know you do a great job, but just maybe to suss it out for us, to see, open that conversation up, and then come back and we could formally nominate somebody from here with agreeing to their terms of reference and everything. I don't know if that works for both of you, but maybe at the end of the day it is Louise at that table, or Councillor Wallace Richmond at that table, but I just want to make sure that we have a full perspective and know exactly what we're getting into.
Okay, understand. I'll let others comment. Councillor Flynn, did you wish to speak to that?
Sure.
Okay.
I had actually pushed my button to say that at the Downtown Salmon Arm Board meeting on Wednesday, for the first time, because of this conversation, there was a representative from the District Arts Council that they had appointed to the DSA board to try to continue to improve the communication between all these very important volunteer organizations. So I felt that was extremely positive, and the person that joined the meeting provided some very positive input on behalf of the Arts Council. And I don't dislike Councillor Eliason's idea, but I also know how busy you are, and I know what skills Councillor Wallace Richmond brings to that portfolio. And like I said about your leadership style, which I very much value, we can't go wrong with either of you there. So I guess I'll wait to hear about the rest, but I have no problem with Councillor Wallace Richmond going there. But Councillor Eliason's idea of having the mayor go to the first meeting and check it out and figure out what they want and see the terms of reference might be good, but I'll wait till hear what others say.
Would you speak to that?
Yes, thanks. Yes, I do. Thank you, Mayor Harrison. So thanks, Councillor Eliason. I guess, you know, one of my first responses was, and we did it, I think, second year into our last term, was to really reevaluate our whole liaison thing and to say what was within our scope, how did we allocate our time, how do we do priorities. And I'm not suggesting that we wait for this period of time, but I think the idea of and this isn't a reference to Councillor Louise Wallace Richmond nor to the Arts Council, but I like that idea of checking it out and coming back and just giving us a little bit of time to ponder the allocation. We are all stretched pretty thin. That's not being for or against it, but just to think about it a little bit. And I'm wondering if we maybe could defer it until after that meeting happened.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Lavery. So, does anybody else want to speak to that? So my initial sense is, yes, we should have someone on the Shuswap District Art Council. We have a person on Roots and Blues, we have it on Shuswap Recreation Commission, and I think open communication is great. I'd ask to maybe give Councillor Wallace Richmond and I a couple of weeks to think about it and the rest of council. And so the deferral, I think, was appropriate. Councillor Wallace Richmond, you are at FCM next meeting, are you not?
Yes, Your Worship.
Okay, so how about if we defer it to the meeting after that?
Wonderful.
Okay, so that would be June.
10th.
June the 10th.
Yes.
So could we put that on the agenda for June the 10th? And we'll look at the item at that time.
Yes.
Okay, anyone from council have any other input? Is everybody okay with that? Okay, we won't go for a motion. We'll just do it. Okay, thank you. Informational correspondence that people wish to speak to. Councillor Flynn.
Just a procedural question. Once something's on that agenda and there's an email or letter, that is public knowledge that we can distribute if somebody's interested in it?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other speakers to any of the items? Okay, I see no other Councillor Lindgren?
Sorry for the delay. I just had not a motion, but just to make a note about item 5, the letter asking for lighting around McGuire Lake. And I know that in Sabnus and the Nature Committee, I forget what they're called now, sorry, and the EAC, there's a lot of talk about lighting disrupting natural things that happen, like duck nesting and the turtles and those kinds of things. And so I would just like to say that if we're going to consider lighting, additional lighting at McGuire Lake, which I have no objection to and think would probably be a good enhancement, that it would be considered how high that lighting is and that it be directional so that it's not disrupting what's happening outside the path where people are walking.
Thank you very much for that observation. And I think we're going to send it to specific referrals at budget. In the meantime, you may wish to bring that up with the Sabnus Committee, and that may be something that they could direct us on as well. That would be helpful. Okay, thank you. Any other speakers to any of the items? Okay, seeing none, we're going to go to council statements and then to Salmon Arm Secondary Youth Council, because we have a few minutes before presentations. So we'll go to council statements, and Councillor Eliason indicated he wanted to talk about bins. So Councillor Eliason, you're up.
Okay, thanks. We received an email from Ingrid, and it was about recycling at Klahani Park, and it kind of exemplified what happens at a lot of our parks, where non-reusable containers such as cans and pop bottles and water bottles are placed next to or on top of or in the garbage cans. And the picture that she sent us is one of our 14-foot bags, our in-ground ones that the crew uses the truck with the arm to lift out, and they collect a lot more garbage. They're a lot stronger. They're low maintenance. But she also talked about how many people leave their cans or bottles to be recycled next door. So my question or my thought is that we ask staff to look into some options for our parks for places to put recyclable containers. Vancouver clearly has them. They're not locked. So it's just a can and bottle one that somebody can walk up to, open up, and if they're going to do the recycling, that they can just take them out. There's no damage. They close it back, and then they get the cans and bottles. So wondering if we can ask staff to look into the costs for Canoe Beach, Canoe Ball Fields, Blackburn Park, and Klahani Park to come up with some solutions for bins for recyclables so that they're not, so we divert them from our waste stream, but also that we can provide a solution to our citizens. I'm not asking for like the 3-way garbage cans yet, which will include compostable materials, which are all out there anyways, but we're not reinventing the wheel. We're not ahead of the game when it comes to recycling and waste diversion. So I don't know, Your Worship, would you like a motion that we direct?
Yes, please.
Okay, so I'd make a motion to direct staff to find appropriate recycling bins for non-reusable containers at those 5 parks.
I think you mentioned 4.
4 parks.
Okay. Seconder, Councillor Cannon. Anyone wish to speak to that? Councillor Flynn, did you want to speak to that? Councillor Lindgren? Yeah. Okay, I'll just skip over you, Councillor Flynn, and I'll come back to you. Go ahead, Councillor Lindgren.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. I think that that's something that we should definitely be doing. I'm wondering if we should be adding Little Mountain Park to that?
Like the soccer fields? Sure.
Okay, that's friendly amendment.
5.
Okay.
Didn't even know it.
Councillor Lassen, did you wish to speak to it further?
No.
Okay. Does staff have any comment on the motion? The motion is to look into it. Any other comments from council? All those in favor? Passed unanimously. Councillor Eliason, did you have any other items there? Councillor Flynn, if you just press your button again, thank you. Councillor Flynn.
Thank you, Worship. Tomorrow morning is EDS board meeting, so I will not report on that because I don't know what's going to happen. Downtown Salmon Arm board meeting was Wednesday. They did a strategic planning session in the evening. I intentionally did not participate in the strategic planning session because I felt it was more important that they have an open can of discussion without the city representative there. So they have asked for a meeting, I believe in an email, to sit down with council and the mayor at some point to discuss the results and have an open, informal discussion about their renewal. So I think they were asking for some time in June because you're away, I'm away, and we'll have to try to firm something up. Silga, as we all except for one councillor who was busy attended Silga. And having been a past president of Silga, I hate to admit this, but it was probably one of the best Silga conventions. Councillor Eliason. Exciting news, though, that we have Councillor Eliason and Councillor Lavery leaving the board, but we have Councillor Cannon and Councillor Wallace-Richmond getting on that board. So our legacy of significant involvement in Silga and leadership continues, and I think that's good news. One of the best public speakers or keynote speakers I've ever seen that the high school should bring in, for sure, I think. The Skid Row CEO and the message he provides in my industry should bring him in as well. Great presentation. And there was lots of other very valuable sessions there. I really enjoyed it and felt it was one of the better Silgas. So good job to our reps on that board and Councillor Eliason. Begrudgingly, I will say your term of leadership at Silga moved the organization forward significantly. Job well done. And it's not really begrudgingly, so thank you for your...
Councillor Wallace-Richmond.
Thanks, Your Worship. I'm delighted to advise council that the Cultural Master Plan Task Force has reviewed the RFP draft, which should go out for bid sometime in June, if all things being equal. And also that the Canada 150 Legacy Adjunct Art Gallery upstairs between City Hall and the courthouse in the foyer is also going ahead. So it's nice to see movement forward on these issues, and indeed grateful to all the team players who helped make it happen.
Thank you for the update, Councillor Wallace-Richmond. Any other council statements? Okay, I would echo Councillor Flynn's comments about Silga. For me, the two most valuable things that we did, well, for me, besides Joe Roberts, the Skid Row CEO, who was, I've heard a number of keynote speakers, and he would be amongst the top 3 I think I've ever heard. But we did a tour, a number of us did a tour of the Penticton Aquatic Center, and we had a very thorough tour. It was very useful. A lot of the things that we've heard from our community about a new aquatic center applied to theirs, and the thing of greatest interest to me was that their new aquatic center now has basically public swimming from 8 o'clock in the morning until 7 o'clock at night every day, all day, except for exceptions. And so when you have a facility like that, you can provide that. And I think that's what we're hearing from our community. So that's the direction that we're trying to move. The other really useful piece was the walking tour of downtown Penticton. And it's interesting because cities our size and larger like Penticton have similar challenges and similar good things happening. And we learned a lot on that tour. It was very helpful. Staff there really showed us their best and also showed us areas that they're working on. So the whole Silga conference I thought was excellent. We'll go now to our secondary youth council. Thank you for being here, and who's going to speak today?
Hello, Your Worship and councillors. Thanks for having us up here today. My name is Jonah Hector, residing at 3953 Eagle Bay Road.
And I'm Griffin Wilczuk, and I live on Lakeview Drive in Blind Bay.
Welcome, Joel and Griffin, and I can tell you've been here before because I didn't even have to ask you to give your name and residential address. You guys have got it.
So today we're just going to be going over the survey we created in our student council. And the point of the survey was just to give the council and worship some insight into the high schoolers' like opinions on what they want in the community. So some of the questions we focused on was climate change, the first one being like, how worried are you about climate change? And then we went to, on the recreation center, how they felt about a new recreation center, and if they wanted a new recreation center, what they wanted to see there. And then we went into some questions on how they feel about school, and if they were to see changes in the school district, what they want to see on like different schools, gradings. And we kept it short and sweet. There was only 7 questions because with high school students, they tend to get bored. So we wanted to make it to the point. And yeah, do you guys have any input or questions on the survey? I think you guys have it with you.
Councillors, do you have any input for Joel and Griffin on the questions or how they've been asked? I think it looks good because people, when they do surveys, they want it to be quick and they want to get their input in right away, and it's, I think, very easy to fill in. So I looked it over and I thought it looked really good.
Thank you. And here's Griffin just on how we're gonna head out the surveys.
Yeah, well, as you can see on there, it's written on there twice. So we're just going to print them off and then cut them down the middle, so we'll have 2. And then we'll just go around classrooms and hand them out. And then I guess we'll just wait there until the students are done and then collect them and run through the results at our next time we get together.
That's a really good strategy. Give them out and wait till they fill them in and then collect them. Because you're going to get a high return rate if you do that. So, well, we look forward to the results, to hearing back from you. Councillor Cannon.
I was just curious if you guys would have room at the bottom to put the question about the plastic bags.
Yeah.
Just
we certainly have room to put more on the backside, and then we could just say like flip over and finish more. So that's why we left some room to make it double-sided, just in case we were to put more questions.
that might be good because you're going to get them out fairly soon and might have them back by, I don't know, the end of May maybe, or when are you guys hoping to have them?
Probably by the end of May for sure, yeah.
That's good input, Councillor Cannon. Thank you. Councillor Flynn.
Well, I just wanted to say that in the future, right on the top of it, this is not for you to complete as though you were answering it, Councillor Flynn, because I took it and started filling it out, and then I went, do I feel safe at school? Or how would I rate my school experience? Well, I can't remember that far back. But no, I think this is a great idea. And I agree with Councillor Cannon, if you could just add it, that one more. I don't think putting another one on the back is going to work. It'll get lost. But if you could add that one question, I think that would be helpful. And I forgot to mention in my SILGA report that it was a great SILGA, and the thing that made it even better, and you guys and all of you should be very proud of your associate who was part of a panel, and clearly he's learned a lot from his mentor because he did a great job. All kidding aside, great job. And it's just so neat to see what you guys are doing and how it's making a difference provincially and regionally. So thank you. I forgot to mention that.
Thank you, Griffin. Thank you, Joel. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, that's everything. Thanks for your time, guys.
We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay. Our first delegation is at 4 o'clock. It is 10 minutes to 4. We're going to take a 5-minute break, 4-minute break, and be back here at our seats in 5 minutes. I see Lana here. Hi, Lana.
He's saying you want to start early, but I need a 5-minute break.
I'm going to bump her off. See how it's going. How you doing? Good. Did Erin talk to you about going later or not?
Yeah, she did.
Okay, is that any good for you?
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay.
Yep.
This guy's got to catch a plane.